This girl is the class president of these terrified students, and everyone is extremely worried because it's pouring rain outside. On top of that, hordes of zombies were frantically hunting for humans, and I have no idea what the hell this girl was thinking to be so dense. She kept pressuring the three guys holding the door shut, and our main character Ye Bei was the one in the middle. Back then, he was still just a timid kid, or to be blunt, a total pushover. The reason she kept demanding they open the door was because her crush, Zhang Heng, was screaming and banging on it from the outside. But in this brutal zombie apocalypse, who would dare open the door for anyone? This girl Li Ruoxi kept putting on her fake holier-than-thou act. She claimed Zhang Heng was their friend, and they couldn't just abandon him, but the blonde guy immediately shot back. "It's nothing but zombies out there. Zhang Heng has definitely been bitten. We can't let him in." Ruoxi pulled rank as the class president, promising to take full responsibility if anything happened. Then she pointed outside to justify her decision. We can still hear him calling out, "That proves he isn't infected yet." She then berated the three of them for having no humanity. The blonde guy was so insulted he saw red, so he told Ye Bei that on the count of 3, they'd quickly open the door for Zhang Heng and slam it shut. Our main character was still timid at this point, so he just obeyed as the blonde guy started counting from 1, 2, then 3, and Ye Bei pushed down on the handle. The moment the latch clicked, the door flew wide open. A zombie immediately charged in, tackling Ye Bei to the ground, while the others froze, their faces pale with terror. It turned out Zhang Heng had already become a zombie. It lunged and opened its jaws right in front of our hero. Seeing this, class president, Ruoxi, grabbed the others and fled. She completely abandoned Ye Bei to be mauled by the zombie. But a bare-handed human was no match for these monsters, and in the end, our main character was bitten on his right arm. The pain was so excruciating, it felt like every nerve in his body was shattering into 100 pieces, making him scream bloody murder. Then Ye Bei used his last ounce of strength to kill Zhang Heng with a saw blade. And before the virus could spread, he used that same saw to cut off his entire forearm. For the next 5 years, he suffered through a miserable existence, constantly starving and tormented, until he finally met a mechanical engineer. Right before dying, the engineer used his last ounce of power to send Ye Bei back in time, a classic time-travel zombie survival regression. Lying there on the research table, our hero wanted only 2 things: redemption and revenge. The zombie apocalypse rebirth plan was a complete success, returning our main character to the exact day they were all hiding in the warehouse. He was once again holding the door, with Zhang Heng's desperate pleas behind him, and the voice of class president Li Ruoxi in front of him. This was the very person whose actions led to him being bitten by a zombie, forcing him to sever his own arm just to stay alive. She was just like he remembered, using her authority to order everyone around, and Ye Bei snapped out of his daze, staring at Li Ruoxi. He remembered how young she looked back then, and suddenly, his suppressed rage ignited. Ye Bei's eyes narrowed as he warned her. "Zhang Heng could have been bitten out there if we let him in. Can you truly bear the consequences?" Ruoxi was still adamant, stubbornly ordering them to open the door and scolding them for having no conscience. She shamed them for not helping a classmate in need, and Ye Bei had to listen to those same grating words all over again. The more he thought about it, the more bitter he became, a grudge he'd never forget. The mechanical engineer had successfully sent him back, giving him a chance to change it all in this. With that thought, Ye Bei immediately told the class president, Ruoxi, "If you're so tough, go open it yourself." Hearing this, she froze for a few seconds. The other girls hiding under the desks were also stunned by this side of the main character. But her pride was too big to back down. She immediately started berating Ye Bei, questioning if he was even a man for telling a girl to open the door. "Now they say you should never hit a woman, but in this case, I'd advise my brothers to grab the pink chair and smack some sense into her." Even as Ruoxi hurled insults, Ye Bei just kept provoking her, asking if she was scared. She's all talk, always making other people do the dirty work while she reaps the rewards. What a total hypocrite. Suddenly, Ruoxi screamed, "Enough," then stormed over and shoved the main character aside. She decided to open it herself, cursing up a storm as she went. The moment she nudged the doorknob, a zombie immediately burst in, knocking the entire door off its hinges. Everyone's face turned pale with fear, and Ruoxi was sent sprawling to the floor. She finally opened her eyes in a panic, only to scream in terror. A vicious zombie was staring intently at her plump thighs, licking its chops and drooling. Dinner time. Dinner time. The others were trembling uncontrollably, their eyes wide with horror, clutching their heads in terror. At that moment, Ruoxi scrambled backward and grabbed onto the blonde-haired guy, and immediately shoved him forward to be her meat shield. Instantly from behind her, Ye Bei lunged forward and landed a powerful kick, sending Ruoxi flying right into the zombie. Just as it opened its maw to enjoy its plump meal, it caught a wrench to the face that completely shattered its head. Blood and guts sprayed everywhere like a fountain, while our main character looked on with a satisfied smirk, ready to enact his school apocalypse revenge. Without a moment's hesitation, he kicked both Ruoxi and the zombie straight out of the storeroom. She was still screaming, begging the main character to save her. Seeing this, Ye Bei felt a deep sense of satisfaction. After all, she had ruined the first half of his life. A gentleman's revenge is never too late, even after 55 years. Then Ye Bei picked up the door and started to close it, much to Ruoxi's horrified surprise. Just a few seconds later, he slammed the door shut and called for everyone to help barricade it. The other students, each grabbing whatever they could find, rushed over to block the door. Ignoring her desperate screams from the other side, she kept pounding on the door, even pulling the class president card to curse everyone out. Suddenly, Ruoxi shrieked as zombies began to tear her apart. Inside, everyone used all their strength to hold the barricade steady, to keep those monsters from bursting in. They held their ground until the next morning, when sunlight finally streamed into the room, and Ruoxi's voice could no longer be heard. Two students in the back looked terrified, recalling the scene where Ye Bei kicked the class president out and then killed the zombie. Zhang Heng remarked that normally the main character was a very peaceful and somewhat timid person, but now he was like a completely different person. Suddenly the main character shot them a sharp glare. The girls flinched, shrinking back in fear. He then turned and asked, "Are you guys scared of me?" The girls mumbled weakly, trying to deny it. From the back, the blonde guy still holding the door turned to thank Ye Bei for saving his life. The rest of the classmates then followed suit, cursing out the class president and praising Ye Bei. This regression survival manhwa was, at this moment, the main character, Ye Bei, gave a gentle smile and told everyone to open the door so he could go check things out, but they all seemed hesitant and terrified by the idea. But the MC reassured them, saying that pushing the class president out earlier was a bit harsh, so he would volunteer to go out and see what was happening. He personally removed the items barricading the door and stepped out majestically, like a god descending. Ye Bei slowly scanned his surroundings and then went out into the courtyard to search, but he couldn't find the class president or Zhang Heng anywhere. The zombies had likely fled because of the rising sun, but just then, his scumbag classmates slammed the door shut, making our hero realize a harsh truth. In this zombie apocalypse rebirth, you can't trust a single soul. Inside the warehouse, his terrible classmates were frantically barricading the door again, trash-talking Ye Bei. After all, he kicked the class president out, so who's to say he wouldn't do the same to them? They even spread rumors that he might have been a murderer before the apocalypse, but Ye Bei just turned back with a smirk, accepting this painful lesson. He ignored them and kept moving forward when a blonde guy inside watched in shock as he approached a female zombie. The creature saw a living person and looked like an addict, spotting their next fix. Then Ye Bei slowly took a defensive stance, gripping his wrench tightly before charging at the zombie. The audience back in the warehouse was so shocked they nearly jumped out of their skin. He locked onto his target and landed a solid blow to its temple, sending the zombie's rotten teeth flying. It stumbled backward, but our MC deliberately smashed its head to pieces, sending a clear message to the scumbags watching. Inside the warehouse, they were utterly terrified, and having achieved his goal, Ye Bei stopped. Then, he reached into the zombie's corpse and pulled out a green gem called a dark gold energy crystal. This is the source of the apocalypse, a potential key to unlocking zombie mutation powers, and an indispensable item for a mechanical engine. While he was lost in thought, he heard footsteps approaching from behind. Ye Bei glanced back to see an old zombie with a white beard groaning as it shuffled closer, and it was time to get to work. The old man was no match for our MC, who slowly raised his wrench and wound up for a big swing. So much for groaning. One hit was all it took to silence it permanently. While back in the warehouse, the cowards watched with wide eyes, still running their mouths. Some were even vomiting. In his classmates' eyes, Ye Bei had always been a coward, so witnessing this brutal efficiency, it even made them suspect that the MC had been a wolf in sheep's clothing all along. A guy with black hair suggested they should use Ye Bei's zombie fighting skills and ask him to come back and help them, but another guy with a bowl cut immediately shot down the idea. But the black-haired guy was thinking long-term. If they stayed locked up in here, they'd eventually run out of food. Just as he finished his sentence, a wrench smashed through the door's glass window. It turned out our MC had returned to deal with them. He invited them to come out and hunt zombies together, but the cowardly boys were so scared, they were trembling all over. They stammered, unable to speak properly, as they spotted a zombie and tried to warn the MC to turn around. Then came another swing. Oh, that didn't do it. Then a second one finished it off for good, and after that, he headed out into the city. He was all alone, with just his wrench. Other survivors who saw Ye Bei assumed his food supplies had run out. This is the harsh reality of a regression survival manhwa. They wondered if he was so hungry that he had to venture out alone. Some wanted to help and call him in, but their companions stopped them, fearing Ye Bei was already infected. And so, he continued on to a small park where about 3 zombies like a little family were fighting over a playground slide. Their jaws were hanging wide open, unable to close. He walked past as if he saw nothing, but they had already smelled the scent of living flesh and immediately swarmed after him. The people nearby watched, thinking he had it coming because they believed searching for food in this zombie apocalypse rebirth was just asking for death. But having survived this time travel zombie survival for nearly 5 years, in his past life, he had become incredibly sharp to their presence. A sudden turn and a few quick strikes were all it took to clean up the entire mess, leaving the 2 judgmental guys who were watching completely terrified. They were completely in awe of the main character. Meanwhile, from the second floor of a nearby house, a pair of eyes was staring intently at Ye Bei. It turned out to be the class president Li Ruoxi, who had escaped death and made it back home, gritting her teeth. She cursed under her breath, vowing that her school apocalypse revenge would come for him sooner or later. After nearly 15 minutes, Ye Bei finally managed to send the zombies to their graves. Before he could even catch his breath, the thumping sound of footsteps echoed from behind him again. He turned around to see not just 1 more, but 3. He was dead tired. And just his luck, those 3 quickly multiplied into dozens more hot on his tail. With no energy left to fight, running was his only option. The people upstairs were still watching Ye Bei's battle with those monstrosities below like it was a real-life 3D movie. As he was running, the main character spotted a convenience store by the roadside, the very same place he used as a hideout in his past life, in this regression survival, Manhwa. He immediately stopped banging on the door and begging the people inside to let him hide for a moment, which prompted them to check the security camera. Ye Bei instantly put on a pitiful face, desperately pleading for help and claiming he was injured. The onlookers were still judging him, certain the convenience store wouldn't be foolish enough to let him in. At that moment, Ye Bei saw the rolling shutter slowly lift, and a zombie suddenly poked its head out and charged at him. It was immediately smacked with a wrench and sent flying. Seeing an opening, the zombie horde rushed in, and there were far too many to fight off. He had no choice but to drop to the ground and slide through the opening into the store. Outside, the horde kept pounding on the door, letting out horrific wails. The main character breathed a sigh of relief. He was almost torn limb from limb. He got up and looked around the store, but didn't see anyone. But then he spotted a little girl hiding under the cashier's counter. The scene shifts to the hideout of a thug who preys on other survivors in the city, robbing them of food and supplies. His name is Wu Gong, and he keeps a gang of useless henchmen, the same ones who were watching Ye Bei. Just then, the lookout who had witnessed the main character's entire ordeal went to snitch, reporting that he saw a student take on 5 or 6 zombies all by himself before slipping into the convenience store. After hearing this, he let out a guttural, arrogant laugh, thinking those zombies must have been weak, probably without any zombie mutation powers. If some student could do it, then his gang could do it with ease. Back at the convenience store, Ye Bei peered over the cashier counter, calling out to the little girl hiding under it. But that's not all. He then demanded that she give him the remote for the shutter. But after waiting for a long time, there was no answer. He let out a sigh and began to act, faking immense pain and begging for help, claiming he'd been bitten and torn apart by the zombies. The naive little girl, named Yuer, heard him and ran out with a first aid kit, tossing it in front of our main character. Suddenly, he shot his hand out and grabbed Yuer's wrist, causing her to struggle in fear, unable to break free. Ye Bei then lifted her hand and leaned in close to negotiate, saying he would let go if she gave him the remote for the rolling shutter. She was blatantly holding the remote in her other hand, yet she stubbornly denied it, asking what remote he was talking about. Spotting his target, Ye Bei pulled Yuer aside and snatched the remote, scaring her half to death. She scrambled up and crawled awkwardly back to the cashier's counter. Then our MC walked over to the aisles and kicked a shopping cart, giving Yuer a huge scare. He then pointed right at Yuer and chewed her out, saying she was way too gullible for letting in a stranger who just claimed to be injured. This triggered a memory from his past life, a key moment in his zombie apocalypse rebirth, where on a rainy day he had also run into this very convenience store to take shelter. That same girl was the one who had bandaged his wound after he'd been forced to sever his own arm, which was bleeding profusely. He gritted his teeth, enduring the agonizing pain that felt like it was tearing his flesh from his bones, and after a few minutes, she finally finished bandaging it. He immediately thanked Yuer for saving his life, and she explained that her dad told her to hide in the store because it was too dangerous outside. Once that was settled, Yuer took the first aid kit and went to get some food, reminding our MC to just rest and make himself at home. After she was out of sight, he thought about how lucky he was to have been helped by such a kind person. Otherwise, he would have either been devoured by zombies or bled out completely. Suddenly, Yuer's screams erupted from the main floor of the store. Curious Ye Bei rushed over to look down and saw a thug named Wu Gong storming in after tricking Yuer into opening the door. He and his gang had faked being on the verge of starvation and dehydration to exploit Yuer's naive trust. It turned out they were just there to loot the entire convenience store. But that wasn't all. They even used her father as bait to draw the zombie horde away. Then the thug flashed a disgusting, perverted grin, demanding she have some fun with him, while the MC in his past life witnessed this but was too cowardly to intervene. And so the kind-hearted Yuer, because she was too good and naive, suffered a brutal and tragic fate, while Ye Bei could only cower in a corner, too terrified to even make a sound. Back in the present of his time-travel zombie survival story, he thought to himself while showering that this time he would save Yuer. But first he needed to make her understand just how dark and cruel humanity becomes during the apocalypse, even if it meant she would see him as a bad guy. Just then, she ran up and knocked on the door, but our MC just turned and snapped at her. He yelled that he was taking a shower and not to disturb him, which terrified Yuer. She immediately apologized and explained that she'd noticed his clothes were dirty and had brought him a fresh set. This very kindness was what infuriated the MC even more. He told her to leave the clothes outside and get lost. Yuer was completely confused about what the heck was happening, thinking, hello, this is my place, right? Inside the bathroom, Ye Bei continued to mutter to himself. How could someone so naive ever survive in this regression, survival manhwa? Still, it had been a very long time since he'd been able to take a proper shower. So our MC just stood there, savoring the incredible feeling. He knew that as the number of zombies increased, more and more fresh water sources would become contaminated. In a few more days, he was certain the water supply to this place would be shut off. Luckily, he was holed up in a convenience store. With its ample supply of food and water, he could survive here for quite a while. Ye Bei planned to use his cards soon to acquire some new equipment and weapons. After sorting out his thoughts, he looked at his younger face in the mirror, feeling a wave of nostalgia. Where did all that time go? His skin was smooth, and he had no aches in his back or legs. The only problem was his flat stomach, so he'd have to start doing some serious training routines soon. After showering, he stepped out, picked up a dress shirt, and then leaned down to yell at Uni. "Why'd you get me a suit to wear? Suits are for sitting around, eating steak and drinking wine. How the hell am I supposed to fight zombies in this?" Meanwhile, at the thug Wu Gong's karaoke bar, he gathered his henchmen to go over the plan. Even though they had food and drinks, it wasn't a long-term shelter, and he wanted to establish a proper survival base to deal with the challenges ahead. So Wu Gong's first step in this time-travel zombie survival was to go out, kill zombies, and seize the convenience store for its supplies. Besides, he'd spotted a cute little prize inside the store. And just like that, Wu Gong rallied his crew, shouting, "Let's go, my boys. Go take down those zombies and bring back the food, and that girl Uni." Outside the store, zombies were constantly pounding on the doors day and night, but inside, Ye Bei had put on the dress shoes so shiny he could see his reflection in them, while Uni turned from her snack to watch him. The protagonist approached her saying they needed to talk, his tone harsh, and his words informal and aggressive. This terrified Uni, who immediately scrambled under the table. He asked where her family was, and she stammered out a frightened reply. Her dad went out for a supply run and hadn't returned. Hearing this, Ye Bei slammed his hand on the table, shouting, "Are you an idiot? You were here all alone, and you just let me in. Weren't you afraid of what I could do to you?" Terrified Uni pressed herself into a corner and tried to explain. She let him in because she saw he was injured and covered in blood. But before she could finish, Ye Bei leaned in close and demanded, "Didn't you know what was chasing me? Aren't you afraid of dying?" The protagonist slumped to the floor in frustration, thinking her naive and timid nature was a liability in this regression survival manhwa. She would just end up being a burden to him. He thought it might be easier to just get rid of her now, but living alone would be too damn lonely. So he decided to let her live, for now. Then the protagonist pointed right in her face and gave an order. "From now on, you do exactly what I say, no arguing. If you dare defy me, you'll regret it." Over at Wu Gong's bar, the moment they opened the door, surprise, a horde of zombies was waiting, and the guy in front was immediately grabbed and bitten on the ear. They swarmed him, tearing him apart like vultures. The other henchmen panicked, realizing these zombies were far more aggressive, hinting at some kind of zombie mutation powers. Wu Gong screamed at his men to take care of the zombies quickly, or they would all be killed. But the red-haired guy had already pissed himself in fear and couldn't take it anymore, so he made a break for it. Seeing this, Wu Gong grabbed him by the head and threw him directly into the horde. In his last moments, the guy looked back in terror and hatred at his boss. but he was quickly torn to pieces. As more and more monsters converged on their location, Wu Gong ordered a retreat to find shelter. Meanwhile, back at the convenience store, Yu Ni finished preparing some noodles and brought them to Ye Bei, who was busy examining the black gold energy crystal. Yu Ni put the instant noodles and hot water on the table, but instead of thanking her, the protagonist told her to get out. He warned her not to disturb him unless he called for her. Once Yu Ni agreed and closed the door, Ye Bei opened the fragrant Thai hot pot instant noodles. He snapped open the plastic fork and began devouring the steaming noodles like a starved animal. It had been so long since he'd tasted instant ramen. It was a sad memory from his zombie apocalypse rebirth, having to endure 55 days of starvation while wandering aimlessly, and that was only a few years into the disaster. In this zombie apocalypse rebirth, instant ramen would become a luxury item on par with king crab and Alaskan shrimp. While he was eating, he heard a huge commotion outside. Just as he glanced over, the glass door shattered and a trembling hand grabbed onto the frame. It turned out to be that guy Wu Gong, who was being chased by zombies and had to climb up to escape. He stared at our main character and demanded to be pulled up, or he would kill him. Hearing this, Ye Bei flew into a rage and immediately grabbed the thermos of boiling water, then stormed over to Wu Gong, opened the lid and splashed the boiling water right onto his hand. Wu Gong screamed in agony, crying bloody murder. As he poured, our MC warned, "You want to kill me? Fine, I'll help you kill yourself first." Suddenly, Yu ran up and grabbed his hand. She then asked him to stop putting on a pitiful expression and begging our main character to let him in and not hurt him. Man, the female side characters in this are so frustrating. Ye Bei was furious, his face twisted in anger as he unloaded on Yu. "I told you not to come in unless I called for you. Do you have any idea what kind of person is out there?" But Yu was insistent, saying her father had taught her never to harm anyone. After she spoke, the entire room fell silent. Ye Bei hesitated, looking at her, then turned back to ask, "Aren't you afraid he'll kill someone if we let him in?" Hearing this, Wu Gong put on a sickeningly sweet expression, putting on a pathetic act to beg for mercy. Sensing their silence, he immediately started scrambling inside, explaining that he had gone out to find food but was surrounded by zombies, forcing him to climb up here, and promised to leave as soon as the zombies dispersed. Our main character now regretted it. He should have just kicked the guy right off the ledge, just to let off some steam. This girl just had to interfere, ruining his chance to deal with him. At that moment, his eyes darted to the box cutter on the table, a classic move in any regression survival manhwa, just in case Wu Gong tried to pull anything. The moment he got inside, he let out a wicked laugh, dropping his fake persona. "This is my turf now," he declared, "and anyone who defies me will be beaten to a pulp." Only then did Yu realize his true predatory nature, but it was too late. The city was now shrouded in darkness. As night deepened, the zombie horde grew, a terrifying reality of time travel zombie survival, swarming into Wu Gong's karaoke bar, probably to sing a few tunes and relieve some. Inside, with the hostesses, only 2 of his goons remained scared out of their minds. The zombie horde was so massive it smashed through the main entrance, and the entire building was on the verge of collapse. The bald guy furiously blamed Wu Gong for everything, saying if he hadn't sent them out, they could have survived here for a few more months. Hearing this, the guy in the purple shirt wondered what happened to him after they were separated by the zombies, and where he had disappeared to. The bald guy, still fuming, said, "Who cares if he's dead or alive? Let's just worry about saving our own skins." Now, they were all completely screwed. Meanwhile, the zombies, drawn by the overwhelming scent of blood, gathered in greater and greater numbers about to smash through the door. Seeing how dire the situation was, the bald guy yelled at the 2 young hostesses, "Get over here and block the door. Stop sitting there crying." The 2 girls scurried over and knelt down to hold the door shut. The bald guy was seething. He thought that with Wu Gong gone, he could finally have some fun, but these damn zombies just had to crash the party. Then, an idea struck him. While they were busy holding the door, he could make a run for it through the balcony. Back at the convenience store, Wu Gong had successfully gotten inside and immediately dropped his sincere facade. He then turned to the girl and asked, "Did you really think I wouldn't kill anyone?" Then Wu Gong decided he was going to have his way with her, carefully, and said if she agreed to be his servant, he'd spare her life. Then Wu Gong shot a murderous glare at Ye Bei, cursing him for daring to scald his hand with boiling water. Next, he wanted to throw our protagonist down to be torn apart by zombies. Then Wu Gong got an idea. He'd break Ye Bei's bones and then turn him into a dried specimen to stuff inside an evolution jar to see what kind of zombie mutation powers he'd get. Meanwhile, our protagonist just stayed silent, watching to see if he'd make a move. He couldn't care less what the old geezer was saying. To make matters worse, he already had a knife ready in his hand, ready to strike at any moment. But just then, Yu spoke up, saying her family owned a convenience store, so there was plenty of food downstairs. She offered to share some with. Hearing this, something felt off. The two thugs just stared blankly in surprise. Then Yu beamed as if nothing was wrong, inviting everyone to eat. She said they wouldn't be upset anymore once their bellies were full. Hearing this, Wugong flew into a rage. His eyes bulged like a boiled pig's, thinking Yu was messing with him, and he lunged forward, grabbing her by the throat. Instantly, Ye Bei whipped out his knife and slashed it across his hand, severing his fingertips. The excruciating pain made Wugong scream in agony. Then our protagonist reversed his grip on the knife, aiming to stab him in the neck. But Wugong saw it coming. He grabbed Ye Bei's arm and forced it down. You could tell who had the upper hand just by looking. Wugong's inner beast awoke. He violently threw our protagonist and Yu aside. The impact was unimaginable for someone so small and frail like Ye Bei. By now, Wugong's entire body was trembling uncontrollably as the pain seeped deep into his very marrow. He nonstop cursed and insulted the two of them to vent his rage. Meanwhile, Ye Bei took a heavy blow, feeling like his ribs had shattered into 100 pieces. But he wasn't done. Wugong then stomped on his leg with a crushing force. He demanded to know how the protagonist could kill zombies so easily before, when his whole group struggled to take down even two of them. Ye Bei seemed completely fearless. He even told him to call him Grandpa, and then he'd reveal his time-travel zombie survival secrets. Hearing that, Wugong flew into a rage. Gritting his teeth, he stomped right on Ye Bei's injured ribs, demanding he spill the beans. Only now did our protagonist feel a pang of regret. He only wanted to teach Yu a harsh lesson about this new world, but now he was paying the price. After a moment's thought, Ye Bei kicked Wugong's leg away and promised to talk. The brute lunged forward, grabbing him by the collar, warning that if he tried anything funny, he'd be torn to shreds and fed to the zombies. Instantly, our protagonist spat a mouthful of bloody saliva right in Wugong's face. This was truly the most infuriating thing that had ever happened to him. After that ultimate insult, Wugong hoisted Ye Bei into the air, then slammed him straight into a wall. He kicked him hard in the chest, feeling like he'd been completely played and humiliated. And so it went. With every curse came another kick to his body. But right at the peak of this beating, Yu managed to grab the knife. She ran up and stabbed him right in the shoulder. That had to hurt like hell. Welp, this girl was in for it now. How could a tiny knife like that kill a beast like him? Wugong turned around, seething with rage, using his 3.5-fingered hand to swat Yu to the ground. Then he yanked the knife out of his shoulder, screaming that he would mince them both. Just as Wugong finished his threat, Ye Bei grabbed a bamboo stake and brought it down hard on the back of his neck. Blood gushed everywhere. It was a truly fatal blow, causing him to collapse face first onto the ground in a bloody mess. Right now, Ye Bei's entire body was trembling with pain, forcing him to lean on his flute to stay up, while Yu looked down and asked, "Is Wugong dead?" Then she held up her blood-soaked hands, sobbing and blaming herself for killing someone, and as she cried, our main character walked over and patted her shoulder. He comforted her. It's okay for a scumbag like him, this was well-deserved. But Yu kept rambling on with her questions. We were clearly trying to save Wugong, but why did he turn out like that after we got to his house? Did you really think this world was full of good people? I have no freaking idea what Yu was still thinking at this point, in this whole time-travel zombie survival scenario. God, she's so long-winded. Hearing this, the main character got pissed and yelled at Yu, telling her that guy wasn't dead yet. Go take a shower and stop your sniveling. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Hearing this, Yu's eyes lit up as she asked again, "He's not dead yet, then hurry up and save him." Damn it, I'm not the main character, but I'm feeling the secondhand rage for him. Luckily, Ye Bei grabbed Yu and tossed her straight out the door, otherwise he would have lost it and decked her. After that, the main character slammed the door shut, cursing, "I've never seen anyone as stupid as you. Get lost." That's how a strong, decisive protagonist in a regression survival manhwa should be. Next, Ye Bei locked the door, swallowing his anger. He cursed Wugong for dirtying his entire room. Then our hero grabbed him by the legs, dragged him to the window, and dangled him headfirst. He stood on a table and gave him one hard kick, sending Wugong flying down into the zombie horde. The moment he hit the ground, the swarm of zombies descended like sharks, smelling blood, their eyes glowing as they rushed the old man's body. Just then, Wugong's eyes suddenly shot wide open. But being alive now was far more painful than death. The zombies were already tearing him apart, each one taking a bite, picking at him like vultures. Our main character stood on the floor above, regretting that he didn't have a sharp knife, or he would have cut the man's legs into pieces before throwing him down. Just then, a noise from the building across the way caught his attention. He glanced over and saw a few zombies had already overrun the entire apartment. One of Wugong's surviving henchmen was up there so terrified he had to jump out and cling to a streetlight. Going down meant death, and going back inside to take the stairs also meant death. Suddenly, Ye Bei called out, "Wait." When the gray-haired man turned back, our protagonist asked, "Is anyone else alive over there?" The gray-haired man stammered and shook his head. "No one's left." It turns out he and the bald guy were holding the door, but someone let go, so the zombies smashed right through it. The result was a total bloodbath. After explaining, he turned to our main character and asked, "Can you come over here to help me and get me to your side?" "Ha, like hell I'm helping you." Ye Bei immediately shut him down. He even warned him that if he didn't want to end up like Wugong down below, he should get lost fast. The gray-haired man glanced down and saw Wugong being picked apart by the zombie horde like a starved carcass, and was too terrified to look anymore. Then he mustered all his courage and jumped to the balcony of the next building, and from there he made his way along the balconies to fend for himself. Seeing him scurrying away like a rat amused Ye Bei, who thought to himself, "Why don't the zombies just eat all these scumbags clean so they won't bother me later in this zombie apocalypse rebirth?" Another night fell upon the city, the time when the zombie hordes swarmed the streets in their greatest numbers. At this moment, our main character opened the door only to find Yuer still sitting there waiting. Ye Bei got angry since he had told her to go take a shower, and was still stubbornly sitting here. Yuer looked up at the window and saw it was splattered with blood. He knew she would be curious, so Ye Bei told Yuer to stop looking, saying the guy was on the first floor. The girl, still foolishly naive, asked, "Did he get away?" The main character sighed. He is not some magical fairy who could just get up and escape. After hearing that, Yuer still had the nerve to argue. "Why did you have to kill him? Even bad people deserve a chance to become better." Hearing this, Ye Bei finally snapped. He slammed his hand against the door and yelled, "You idiot, have you never heard the story of the farmer and the snake? He was an evil man, pure evil. If you save him, he will just turn around and kill you. Besides, he and I are the same, we have to kill each other to survive. This is a full-blown zombie apocalypse rebirth. You get it." Yuer, terrified, kept muttering, "What is a zombie apocalypse?" Ye Bei was afraid he would lose control and kick her right in the mouth, so he just walked away to continue his shower. Just then Yuer stood up and ran after Ye Bei, calling his name. But somehow, being the clumsy person she was, she tripped on the stairs. The main character turned around just as a whole slab of meat fell on him, knocking him out cold. He tried to hide the pain in his ribs, then he picked Yuer up, carried her back to the room and placed her on the bed, trying to remember if she got hurt. But he did not see any bruises, and when he touched her forehead, he realized she had a fever. He then started rummaging through all the cabinets, looking for medicine. While searching, he prayed that Yuer would be okay because she was just getting in the way. Finally, he found a medicine box. But when he opened it, he found a pink diary. The main character opened it and saw it was a list of donations that Yuer had written. "I had chemo today, and it did not hurt at all. I even cheered on the little boy in the next room. The doctor told me, it is thanks to the help of so many people that I can get treatment. So I want to be a good person in the future." After that, Ye Bei turned the page and found a medical report. He glanced over at Yuer, then read the report and saw she had leukemia. Then he peeled back the bandages on Yuer's arms and legs, and thought, "So this is the reason why Yuer is so determined to save people no matter what. But the world, that was once so gentle to you, does not exist anymore." Just then, Ye Bei's hand accidentally brushed against his pocket, and he remembered the 3 black gold energy crystals, sparking an idea. I wonder if these things, a source of potential zombie mutation powers, could have any effect on Yuer's condition. In the end, a new day dawned, welcoming both the city's survivors and the zombies. The morning light shone through the gaps between the skyscrapers and onto their desolate corpses. At that moment, the main character, having just woken up, called Yuer over to his room, saying he wanted to find her father. Ye Bei felt this place was not safe and thought it would be better to hand Yuer over to her dad. Besides, if her dad went to get supplies like she said, should not he be back by now? But Yuer repeated her father's instructions. She was only supposed to wait at the store for him to return with supplies, and in the meantime, she had to keep the door locked and not go anywhere. After hearing this, Ye Bei asked when her old man left. Yuer looked down sadly and said, "It has been 3 days already. Normally my dad is only gone for about half a day." Hearing that, Ye Bei slumped into a chair, completely exasperated, telling Yuer to use her brain. "He has been gone this long, and you still do not know what that means." Yuer frantically explained, "Nothing could have happened to my dad, because her dad had called 3 days ago promising he'd be back soon." The main character pressed on. "So, in those 3 days, have you heard anything else from him? He's either been devoured by zombies, or he's locked up somewhere waiting for rescue." Diep Bok asked, so we're not going to save him. Nu Ni just parroted what her father told her, that no matter what, she was not to leave this place until he returned. At this point, every time the girl opened her mouth, the MC got so mad he could spit blood. He immediately stood up, stormed over to Nu Ni, and said her father was definitely in trouble. Are we really not going to save him? Are you telling me you'd save that scumbag but not your own father? Diep Bok's blood boiled. He couldn't hold back, and immediately pointed right in Nu Ni's face, saying this wasn't a request. He could easily strangle Nu Ni and leave, but since she had saved him, he had to take her to her father, to repay the debt. Now he was pissed as hell. Diep Bok yelled, "Get the hell up and pack your things, stop whining." Nu Ni was scared to death, scrambling to run, only to uselessly trip on the stairs, making the main character completely exasperated. The street below looked like a desolate ruin, as if abandoned for 1,000 years. The population here consisted mostly of shambling zombies. Suddenly they heard the sound of an engine roaring towards them. Seeing this, the zombies swarmed out to block the road, looking for a morning snack. The car honked its horn and flashed its blinding headlights, but they just shamelessly stood there, baring their teeth without a second thought. The driver immediately slammed into the zombie horde, sending them flying everywhere and killing them on the spot. Back with our MC, he was calmly packing snacks and drinks into his backpack, preparing to leave. Then Diep Bok glanced over and asked Nu Ni, "What are you hiding over there for? Are you done packing?" Nu Ni stepped out wearing a cute knee-length blue dress carrying a pink bunny-shaped school bag. Finding it completely ridiculous, the MC asked Nu Ni if she was going on a picnic or maybe a 5-star vacation. But it was too late to make her change now, so he just asked if the instant noodles he'd asked her to make were ready. Afterward, Diep Bok ate the noodles to stave off his hunger before heading out, calculating that they should wait for the sun to get a little higher before making a move. This was a classic time travel zombie survival strategy, waiting for the sun to weaken the zombies outside. He remembered seeing plenty of cars on the street and hoped to find a good one. Then he could just get this girl in the car, hoping she wouldn't slow him down. He saw Nu Ni eating a spicy stick snack and felt a craving. So the MC asked for a piece, wanting to savor a moment of nostalgia before something bad inevitably happened. Just as Nu Ni was handing the pack of spicy sticks to Diep Bok, the car from before suddenly crashed right through the entrance, shattering the glass doors. The MC barely had time to shield Nu Ni, wondering if it was an earthquake or something just as violent. He turned to see the car sitting neatly inside the store. Then the vehicle reversed, and the person inside opened the door and stepped out. It turned out to be a round, chubby guy looking for a convenience store to fill his stomach. He walked over and kicked the head of a zombie, blocking his way. After that, he decided to claim all the food in this store to fill the bottomless pit that was his stomach. As soon as he stepped inside, he saw chips and snacks laid out before him, unable to hide his drooling hunger. He then ran over, opened a sack, and started grabbing everything he liked. It turns out the supermarkets in the city had already been completely looted, so he risked his life coming to this desolate town to scavenge. He was ecstatic, with a sausage already hanging from his mouth. He immediately got a knife to his throat. The MC then forced him to sit still, dropped the items in his hands, and started chewing him out. "The last time you barged in here, you were tossed outside to decorate the pavement, and you still dare to show your face again." Just then, the man warily glanced back and seized the opportunity to fling a pile of snacks right into the MC's face, then grabbed his loot and bolted. He scrambled into his car and tried to start it, but for some reason, he fumbled with the wrong key. That's when Ye Bei charged into the car, knife in hand, gritting his teeth as he lunged at the man. Drenched in sweat, the guy screamed and begged for his life. Suddenly, from behind, Yuer ran up and told the MC to stop. When Ye Bei turned to glare at her, Yuer quickly made an excuse that the fat guy had damaged the store when he crashed into it. If he died, there would be no one to pay for the repairs. Seeing her point, Ye Bei stopped and kicked the man out of the car, forcing a trade as collateral, and then making the guy his new driver. He told Yuer to get in the car while he got the luggage. Afterwards, the chubby guy apologized to her, explaining he only crashed because he was starving, and had no idea anyone was inside. As Yuer dragged a heavy bag of luggage to the car, she was shocked to see a horde of zombies had completely surrounded them from behind. The chubby guy got pissed, saying he had just plowed through a bunch of them. How is there another horde already? Yuer quickly pulled their things into the vehicle and slammed the door shut just as the car took off. The chubby driver sarcastically told everyone to buckle up for safety, then floored it like a bat out of hell, sending the trash-tier zombies flying. It was pure chaos inside the car, as he accelerated, braked, swerved left and right, and plowed through the undead. They finally managed to break through the horde. The chubby driver was ecstatic, thoroughly enjoying this real-life obstacle course adventure. Ye Bei, who was about to lose it, angrily pressed his knife to the driver's neck, asking if he was insane and telling him to drive properly or he'd be turned into roasted pork. The chubby guy got so scared he started crying, explaining that he had to ram the zombies to get through, and besides, they never even told him their destination. After that, Ye Bei turned and asked her where her father got his supplies. She vaguely recalled that it was in Fudong City. The last time her father called, he said he was there. Hearing this, the chubby driver's face fell. That city was normally packed with people. This meant it was now undoubtedly swarming with zombies. Just as he opened his mouth to comment, the MC threatened him, "Talk less, just drive." After driving for a while, the chubby guy wanted to put on some bolero music to de-stress and cruise, but Ye Bei hated it, complaining it was way too loud, saying something with a beat would be okay. The chubby guy reluctantly turned it off, but then offered to sing a love ballad for them instead. Zombies on the road swarmed at the scent of fresh blood, and much like them, this car rammed into any zombie it saw, fearing nothing and no one. The chubby guy had just popped a piece of candy into his mouth when he spotted a lady in a green dress staggering onto the road. He floored it, sending the car flying right into her. The chubby guy cackled with glee, only to get an earful from Ye Bei before he could even finish laughing. Ye Bei told him to shut up immediately because he couldn't get any sleep. The chubby guy tried to explain that on such a boring drive. "You complain about the music, you won't let me sing, and you yell at me for laughing." He then tried to reassure the MC. "Don't worry, this car is super durable. Hitting zombies is a piece of cake." Before he could even finish, Ye Bei had his knife back at the man's throat and yelled, "I told you to cut it out, so just stop." The chubby guy immediately slammed on the brakes and the MC said in exasperation, "I told you to stop making noise, not stop the car." But the driver just looked to the heavens and wailed that the car had stopped because they were out of gas. Hearing this, Ye Bei freaked out and cursed the Jinx's entire family tree for 18 generations. Running out of gas in the middle of a time-travel zombie survival scenario was just unbelievable. While cursing, he grabbed the fat guy by the collar and ordered him to get out of the car and lure the zombies away. As he was leaving, he even grabbed a bag of snacks, figuring he'd rather be a well-fed zombie than a hungry one. Yue, sitting in the back, looked out the window in fear. While she was dazed, a zombie suddenly lunged at the side mirror, scaring the soul right out of her. All the surrounding zombies were converging on their location, and if this kept up, even this car would only hold them off for so long before everyone inside was surrounded and killed. Just then, our protagonist noticed a machete behind the driver's seat. Seeing a zombie menacing the door, he kicked it open, sending the creature flying. The moment the zombie saw a human, it charged mindlessly, but Ye Bei immediately drew the blade and threw it straight into the center of its head. He then commented on what a smooth blade it was. From behind, a fat zombie was already slowly approaching, so it was met with a clean slice without any hesitation. Against this type of zombie, a regular blade was more than enough to cut them down. The remaining ones also sensed a living person and swarmed him like flies on garbage. He quickly took one out with a kick, while the next one's head was split in half. The most lethal blow was a downward thrust through the skull of one on the ground. In just a few minutes, he had cleared out all these grunts, a sight that made the fat guy panic and scream his head off. Afterward, he banged the hilt of his blade against the car and yelled for the Jinx to get out, but the fat guy just whined, "I don't want a boss." Seeing the guy whining and dragging his feet, Ye Bei jumped back into the car, grabbed him by the shirt, and said that just hiding in the car was a death sentence. It was better to just follow his plan. The protagonist had noticed quite a few cars outside, and if they were lucky, some of them might still have gas. Ye Bei would handle all the zombies on the road, while the fat guy rushed out to siphon gas from the nearby cars. Saying this, he got right in the fat guy's face and asked, since he was the one driving around, he must know how to siphon gas, right? After that, the protagonist told Yue to wait in the car. He told her not to move an inch. As soon as the fat guy got out, he was already regretting that Ye Bei made him pour out a perfectly good bottle of Coke to use for the gas. A few minutes later, with every few steps they took, the protagonist was cutting down another zombie. It made the fatty who initially planned to act tough realize he had become nothing more than a gopher in this regression survival manhwa. While struggling to deal with the horde, the fatty called out to the protagonist to say something. He said that actually. He suddenly remembered there was a spare gas can in the trunk. Ye Bei, who was in the middle of slaughtering zombies, froze, and his eyes widened in disbelief. He turned back and asked, "What did you just say?" The fatty glanced at the menacing blade in the protagonist's hand. He hurriedly explained that he was so scared he'd completely forgotten about it. Right after he rushed to get the gas can to pour it, but Ye Bei called out, "Hold on, don't add the gas yet, I want you to help me get a few things." Then Ye Bei opened his palm to show him a dark energy crystal, then pointed the blade at his head and said that these things, the source of zombie mutation powers, are inside the zombies' skulls. He wanted the fat guy to help him dig all of them out. After saying that, the protagonist immediately plunged the blade straight into a zombie's head, leaving the fat guy completely stunned and speechless. He then dug into the middle of the zombie's head, revealing a green crystal for the fatty to see. The fat guy found it truly disgusting, thinking he should have just stayed hidden in the car. The moment he finished that thought, Ye Bei pointed the blade right at him, over to him asking if he wants the fat on his belly turned into meatballs or fried dough for a later snack. Scared witless, the fat guy explains that the main character took his blade, so he has nothing to dig with. Ye Bei tells him to just use his mouth to gnaw it out. Then the main character orders the fat guy that for every zombie he slashes, he has to dig one out. The chubby guy hesitates, before slowly approaching the zombie corpses. The smell alone almost makes him want to puke, but he's in too deep now, so he has to obey and find something to dig with. Using his mouth was out of the question, but he finally finds a tiny mini shovel and slowly approaches the bodies, his hands trembling. He has to poke one with the shovel first, to see if it'll lunge at him, then he casually jams it into its face and makes an assessment. Their heads are surprisingly fragile, just like sponge cake, and after digging for a few seconds, he already sees the crystal. He picks it up and sees a black pearl-like orb, but it's emitting a blue-green light from within, shocked that a human brain could contain such a thing. Overcome with curiosity, he asks Ye Bei if this thing is valuable only to get cussed out, finding it quite interesting. He figures this must be the source of the zombie mutation powers, and considers hiding one for himself. After nearly 15 minutes of slashing, he finally clears the nearby area, deciding to deal with the distant ones later. The main character feels he's getting used to this scrawny student body, again a key part of his zombie apocalypse rebirth, but it's still not enough, because his movements are far too slow. After a moment of thought, he turns and asks the fat guy how many he's dug out. The chubby guy holds out both hands to show off his haul. He's been digging like a madman this whole time, after which Ye Bei tells him to wash them clean and wrap them all up. Finally, he tells him to fill the tank quickly so they can get back on the road. He then pokes his head in to check on Yer, only to find she's already passed out. Panicked, he jumps into the car and shakes her, but she's unresponsive. The main character immediately remembers Yer's medical condition and touches her forehead, realizing her fever is even higher than yesterday's. He then opens Yer's bag to check for medicine before giving her some water and a fever reducer. The fat guy also pokes his head in to ask what's wrong but gets chewed out by the main character who tells him to hurry up so they can leave. After filling the tank, he gets in the car and tries again, suggesting she probably just passed out from the heat. Before he can finish, Ye Bei shoves his blade right in the fat guy's face, blaming him for lying about being out of gas, which caused the delay. He threatens that if anything happens to the girl, he'll chop him into 100 pieces. Hearing this, the fat guy begs for his life and promises to drive carefully. After a while, the chubby guy asks for the main character's name, complimenting his insanely cool sword. Ye Bei tells him to introduce himself first, and having waited for a chance to talk for a while, he confidently says his name is Zhang Heng, and he used to own a car repair shop in the city. Everyone there turned into zombies, so he had no choice but to grab a car and escape with his life. This car belonged to a friend, who left it for repairs but never came back, so he just took it. Then the main character starts to say his name is Ye Bei, and he's a... Before he can finish his sentence, the fat guy slams on the brakes, sending Ye Bei lurching forward. Nearly losing his front teeth, he sits up and presses his blade to the fat guy's neck, yelling, "Are you trying to die, stopping like that?" The chubby guy stares ahead in panic because a massive fire is blocking the road to the city. A moment later, Yer also regains consciousness. Yer sat up and stared at the massive fire in front of them, then disappointedly called out for her dad. Seeing this, the chubby guy mentioned there was a detour to the city, but it would take a bit longer, asking if they wanted to take it. Ye Bei decided to go with the detour, but they needed to find some new equipment first. He then asked the chubby guy if he knew of any electronics or weapon shops nearby. After a moment of thought, the big guy remembered a blacksmith shop and immediately turned the car around. He explained that a friend from his hometown was in the southern part of the city, a buddy of his who opened a forge with over a dozen years of experience, so his craftsmanship was top-notch. The big guy wasn't sure if his friend was still at the old spot after this zombie apocalypse, but he was certain the place would still have plenty of good gear left. The blade in our protagonist's hand was also custom-made by that same friend. Hearing this, Ye Bei thought to himself, he had already collected a good amount of black gold, so if the forge had the right weapons, he might be able to craft something even better, as long as this chubby guy wasn't playing any games. Afterwards, the big guy went on telling stories about the old days, how he and his buddy used to run around naked in the rain. reminiscing about the past. Just as he was getting to the climax of his story, Ye signaled for silence, completely ruining his mood. And just like that, the big guy drove them across several bridges, finally reaching their destination. Everyone got out of the car to survey the area. In our protagonist's assessment, the place looked more like a garbage dump than a forge. He then pressed his blade against the chubby guy's stomach, warning him that if there was nothing worthwhile here, he would slice him into 100 pieces. But one thing was for sure, they had to clear out this horde of zombies before going inside, a classic problem in any time travel zombie survival. It was possible the big guy's friend from back home was now one of the zombies here. As usual, our protagonist would be the one to cut them down, while the big guy was tasked with digging the cores out of their heads. Just as they were about to move out, Ye called everyone back, saying she wanted to help. Hearing that our protagonist immediately refused, worried she might suddenly pass out or get bitten by a zombie, which would be a point of no return. But Ye insisted, promising she would be careful. Seeing this, the big guy praised Ye for her bravery, then suggested she could dig out the cores, while he would just gather them up. Wow, what a genius move, trying to pawn off the dirty work. Our protagonist didn't even bother to argue anymore. He immediately charged forward, his blade a blur of motion, while behind him the big guy and Ye were busy getting to know each other and exchanging names and family stories. Opposite the forge stood a rather tall apartment building, and inside, someone was observing them through a pair of binoculars. It was another thug, the local boss of this area. Suddenly, a young man in a blue shirt burst in to report on the situation, only to take a bullet straight to his left eye for the crime of entering the boss's room without knocking. Oh, it seems the gray-haired underling of Wugong had found his way here, seeking to become a subordinate of this tattooed boss. The leader asked him if he had something to report. Trembling, he stammered that he had just spotted some people at the forge across the street taking out zombies. The boss was annoyed to hear this, because he had already noticed that long before his followers did. But the gray-haired man, head bowed and trembling, revealed that he actually knew the protagonist, having met him a few times back in North Village, a history that felt like it was straight out of a school apocalypse revenge. He explained that the protagonist single-handedly cleared out a ton of zombies, as if he had some kind of zombie mutation powers. Hearing this, the boss found it quite interesting, and called for a maid to bring out a pack of instant noodles. He then tossed it to the gray-haired man as a reward, telling him to go eat, and then come back to tell him everything in detail. The gray-haired man bowed gratefully and left, while the boss looked down at Ye Bei's group, chuckling like he'd just found the main character of a regression survival manhwa. Wondering if he should savor the moment, or if Ye Bei would pull some stunt, the boss called the gray-haired guy back before he could leave. Get rid of the blue-shirted guy's body, and then tell the others that whoever wants to go down and mess with Ye Bei will get a huge reward. A few minutes later, the three of them finished clearing out the zombies and collecting the beads. The main character assigned the chubby guy to check the nearby rooms, while he would search the one right in front of them. Then the main character kicked the door down and saw it was empty inside. Ye Bei went straight in to see if there was anything worth looting. He noticed the owner's forge was still lit, making it unclear if they were ambushed by zombies or had just left. Suddenly the chubby guy ran over to report. Nothing here was destroyed, but he couldn't find anyone. Hearing this, Ye Bei told him to hand over all the beads, then go outside and find some discarded engines and iron pipes. He also mentioned things like metal sheets and told him to take a blade and be ready to provide backup at any moment. The chubby guy was confused, asking if they weren't just here to borrow weapons. Ye Bei explained that in a few more weeks, these ordinary blades would be useless in this regression survival manhwa, so they had to forge stronger weapons. Even after hearing this, the chubby guy still lingered. He hung around to ask if Ye Bei even knew how to forge, only to get chewed out again. He walked away, sighing, feeling unjustly scolded. Such a hot-headed young man. Seeing this, Ye wanted to ask if she could help, but by then, Ye Bei had already stoked the flames. He told her to shovel coal into the forge, and then pump the bellows to intensify the fire, explaining that the first skill of a mechanist is forging. Then he got to work, the sounds of his heavy hammering and sharp clanging filling the air. With his chubby fan, Zhang Heng, watching in admiration, he finally had him pour all the beads into a container. He then placed the container on the fire, and after a few minutes, the beads melted down. Next, Ye Bei took out a small knife, sliced his palm, and let his blood drip into the molten beads, a classic move to unlock zombie mutation powers. The green liquid from the beads and the main character's blood fused together, and he then poured the mixture onto the freshly forged piece of iron. It was like adding the secret ingredient to a master recipe. Once the liquid and the iron fused, he resumed hammering. He worked late into the night to finish the job. By the next morning, the boss's lackeys were already lurking near the forge. The gray-haired guy, still terrified, recounted how he'd seen Ye Bei slice through zombies like they were vegetables, wondering why the boss still wanted them to start trouble. Meanwhile, the thick-lipped guy behind him just wanted to capture the main character and claim the boss's entire reward. As for the older guy in the purple shirt, he was just hoping to spend a passionate night with the sexy assistant. Among them, the guy in the green shirt was the most level-headed, and he made a point that carried some weight. He figured there had to be a reason the boss was so fixated on Ye Bei, especially since all the nearby zombies were already taken care of. Making a move would be easy. They planned to wait until night, when Ye Bei's group let their guard down, and then they would strike silently. At the same time, our master blacksmith main character was still hard at work cutting each piece of iron. His skill made Zhang Heng wonder if he'd graduated from some elite blacksmithing academy, as Ye Bei designed every component, from the smallest to the largest. He assembled the larger pieces, forging and filing them bit by bit, and finally, after several hours, he completed a razor-sharp blade. The blade of this saber was etched with a dazzling lightning pattern. The materials were ready, and now it was time to witness the power of a mechanist in this time-travel zombie survival. He worked tirelessly until nightfall. Yuer had already prepared a quick meal. Thankfully, the kitchen here was still functional. Suddenly, a hand from behind clamped a cloth over Yuer's mouth. It was the guy in purple, one of the boss's underlings. Back in the forge, the main character was still diligently sharpening his blade, while the chubby guy sat beside him, curiously touching it in admiration. Now only the final step remained: activation. He took 2 pliers and touched them together, creating 1,000 massive bolts of lightning. With that, the second phase was complete. The fatty looked on with envy, totally awestruck and desperate to have one for himself. Suddenly, they heard Yuer's voice from the courtyard and immediately rushed out, only to find she had been captured and dragged outside. The young man in blue demanded the main character drop his weapon and come with him to see Boss Luo, or else he would send Yuer to the afterlife right here and now. Damn it, too much talk. This was a good chance to test his new sword anyway. Ye Bei raised his blade to the sky. Then, he slammed it straight into the ground, creating a wave of blue energy that lit up the entire courtyard. As he lifted the sword, the energy wave split in 2, slicing the man in blue into 2 pieces. The others were scared shitless and ran for their lives, but he was determined not to let them escape. He immediately swung again, shattering the chubby goon's weapon, then sent his head flying like a baseball. At this point, the gray-haired guy blamed the one in purple, saying his lust for the girl blinded him and made him deviate from the plan. If they did not release the girl now, there would be no escape, but the guy in purple thought if he let Yuer go, the light from that blade would fly straight at them, and if the mission failed, they would all be meeting their maker anyway, or face the barrel of Boss Luo's gun. But Heaven's Net has large meshes, and Ye Bei had already flashed to the gray-haired man's side. Suddenly, the fatty called out to the main character, warning him that zombies were approaching from behind, moving at an incredible speed, and showing signs of enhanced zombie mutation powers. It was almost as if they were on meth. The fatty saw the frenzied zombies closing in a sight all too common in this zombie apocalypse rebirth, and looked to the main character for a solution. Pissed off, Ye Bei gripped his sword tightly and unleashed a sweeping arc that sliced right through their necks. The fatty was completely stunned, his mind was totally blown. Turning around, he saw the boss's lackeys were about to escape. The fatty ran to tell Ye Bei, who angrily ordered him to get in the car and chase them. Immediately, the fatty waddled over, hauling his over 200-pound body onto the warhorse, and told Ye Bei to be careful. The whole hero saves the damsel thing was up to him now. Just a few minutes later, the god of war was honking loudly right behind them. At that moment, the 2 goons took refuge in a nearby bus. The fatty stopped his vehicle in front of a large building, looking quite worried. Fearing their entire nest would swarm out and overwhelm him, the fatty looked down and saw they had blocked the entrance with a bus. So, how was he supposed to get in? The first 2 took the opportunity to drag Yuer into the building, while 2 others eyed him menacingly, blocking his path. Then, they jumped out of the bus, demanding to take the fatty's warhorse. They ordered him to strip off everything he was wearing. Only then would they let him go. The fatty brandished his saber, threatening them. Don't mistake a silent tiger for a Hello Kitty. I am not some kind of pacifist either. After that, the 2 bastards charged at him with knives, while the fatty carefully held his saber in a defensive stance. Suddenly, a flash of light sliced through the air, cutting both the goons and the bus in half. It was Ye Bei. He strode forward majestically, telling the guy to stop gawking and to go rescue the hostage. The protagonist approached the car and sliced it to smithereens, sending up a cloud of smoke, revealing several guards already lying in wait. The guy in the cap immediately jumped up and hurled a dagger at our protagonist, showing off some top-tier reflexes. Just as it was about to hit his cheek, Ye Bei casually raised his sword to block it, sending the dagger spinning 360 degrees. He then unleashed a slash that sent a shockwave hurtling toward the man in the cap just as the thugs started using Molotov cocktails. They all started chucking them at their opponent, and the shattering bottles engulfed the two in flames. The protagonist immediately unleashed a few slashes forward, forcing all the little rats to show themselves. Suddenly, a bullet whizzed past Ye Bei's face, but he tilted his head just in time to dodge it. It turned out to be from Boss Luo, who had witnessed everything our hero just did in this zombie apocalypse rebirth. The boss was intrigued that someone with such zombie mutation powers existed and wanted to invite the protagonist for a drink. When Ye Bei shot him a death glare, the boss immediately raised his hands in surrender, insisting his intentions were sincere. He claimed to be sincere, and even offered to grant any one request to earn his trust, but of course, Ye Bei wasn't buying it. He immediately drew back his sword, ready to strike. Just then, the boss pressed a gun to Yuer's head, claiming they were just hosting her. She seemed exhausted and was sleeping soundly, he noted, adding that he found Ye Bei's weapon-based abilities terrifying. He knew that if he didn't treat him with respect, he'd be the one getting torn limb from limb. The boss then challenged him, wondering if his sword was faster than a bullet. The chubby guy leaned in and whispered, asking what their next move was. It was obvious that one shot would be fatal, and to make matters worse, Yuer was still their hostage. After a moment of thought, Ye Bei suddenly let out a sinister laugh, telling the boss he was working on a major project but lacked the manpower. So if the boss could gather all of his men for him to command, he would accept the invitation. The boss was confused but went along with it, spreading his arms and offering to welcome Ye Bei with the utmost formality. Hearing this, the chubby guy asked the protagonist if he was insane for asking everyone to gather, especially since they all had guns. But Ye Bei just snapped back, telling him if he couldn't see the plan, he was free to leave. His pride wounded, the chubby guy decided he didn't want to stick around and left immediately. Before he left, he still expressed his concern for Ye Bei, telling him not to regret his decision, but Ye Bei just found him to be a nuisance. Just then, the boss's entourage appeared, all dressed formally in suits, bowing respectfully to welcome him. They then escorted him to the boss's room, where all of his underlings had gathered, every one of them looking like a hardened thug. The boss began to speak, asking if the number of men gathered was sufficient. Every able-bodied man within a 10-mile radius was now present. He boasted of being their leader, then asked for our protagonist's name and what he required of them. Ye Bei introduced himself, and then revealed that he recognized the boss. He then asked if the boss knew the origin of this zombie plague. The boss was taken aback. He asked how Ye Bei could possibly recognize him, let alone know the cause of the outbreak. Our protagonist, a classic hero from a regression survival the boss was the one who realized the zombie virus was spreading, starting to stockpile supplies early on, as if he was living through a zombie apocalypse rebirth. His immediate goal was to establish the Yu Long Gang, so hearing this struck a nerve, startling him, because the Yu Long Gang was a secret. He had only told a few people, so how could Ye Bei possibly know? After this conversation, the boss became even more interested in our main character, who then pulled out the black gold energy orb, asking if this was what he was truly after. Hearing our MC speak like a fortune teller made the boss laugh heartily, demanding Ye Bei tell him everything he knew, so our MC lowered his head with an all-knowing look. He began to lay out details about the zombie virus spread, the kind of knowledge you'd only see in a regression survival manhwa, stating the boss had probably heard a few theories. First, according to the bacterial research theory, the virus was spread to other parts of the world by birds and insects. The second is the biochemical weapon theory, arguing that there's no more convenient warfare tactic than letting your enemies kill each other. The only problem is once a fire like that is started, it's impossible to contain it right away. The third theory is even more out there, the alien invasion theory, where a meteorite carrying the zombie virus crashed into Earth and was dispersed into the atmosphere upon entry. It then entered human bodies and turned them into hosts, after which our MC guessed that the boss must have heard at least one of the three theories above, which is why he left the city to return to his hometown and form a gang. The boss admitted that our MC read him like an open book. Then the boss took out 2 orbs, just like our MC's, and said that he'd been wondering for a long time how to actually use the orbs found inside zombie skulls. He then pointed to the MC's sword and asked if it was related to these orbs. Our main character confirmed it was. He then requested the boss prepare the necessary tools. The boss agreed, but wanted to inspect Ye Bei's sword first. Our MC was unwilling and raised his sword to defend himself, but the boss suddenly mentioned Yuer and pressed a gun to her head. He said he hoped nothing deadly would happen here. At this, our MC hesitated for a few seconds before finally handing his sword over to the henchman. The giant henchman barely took hold of the sword before its weight crushed his foot. He struggled just to carry it over to the boss, exclaiming how incredibly heavy it was. The boss felt like today was just one surprise after another. He told the MC to get on with the demonstration. Before he began, Ye Bei explained that the great catastrophe of this apocalypse was caused by the zombie virus, and once a person is infected in the brain, this black orb forms. This orb is called black gold energy, and it has a high affinity for both flesh and metal. If you know how to harness it, you can create incredibly powerful weapons. Hearing this, the boss wondered, if it has a high affinity for flesh, could it be a type of elixir that grants zombie mutation powers, turning you into an immortal if you eat it? Hearing this, our MC gave a sly grin, saying that people have tried eating it, but the majority just turned into zombies. The boss immediately asked what happened to the minority who didn't turn. Ye Bei then told everyone to watch what was in his hands, because he was only doing this once. He warned them to pay close attention or regret it. The first step is activation. He then took 2 pieces of metal and pressed them together, creating a powerful aura that surrounded his entire body. This energy then reacted with the electrical outlets and fuse boxes in the room, causing them to short-circuit and burn out, plunging the room into darkness. It was then the boss realized this was an electromagnetic pulse generated by the black gold energy. Immediately, while no one was looking, Ye Bei grabbed the sword and swung it straight at the boss. But the boss managed to dodge the blow. Enraged, he aimed his gun and fired a shot, but our protagonist dodged the bullet as well, letting it fly straight into the neck of one of his own men. At that moment, he brought his sword down, slashing it directly across the boss's stomach, and blood splattered everywhere. The boss screamed in agony, regretting his careless mistake that left him unable to dodge. He thought to himself, there's no way I'm letting him know the properties of the black gold. If he got his hands on it, the Dark Dragon Gang would develop all sorts of black gold weapons and become unstoppable tyrants, not even giving a damn about the military. Within the boss's sphere of influence, he enslaved, tortured, and killed. There was nothing he wouldn't do. That's why before they could achieve anything, he had to wipe them all out, not leaving a single one alive. Our protagonist was quickly becoming a butcher, but he couldn't bear to let Yuer witness these horrific scenes firsthand. Ye Bei only wanted Yuer to understand the cruelty of the apocalypse, but he didn't want her to fall into its trap. Suddenly, a hand grabbed the doorway, causing Ye Bei to immediately jump up and raise his sword defensively. Hello, what a beautiful day. The big guy greeted everyone, then walked in, shining his flashlight, seeing that everything was already taken care of. Just then, the protagonist picked up the gun from the ground, ejected all the bullets, and said, "My objective for coming here has been achieved." Seeing this, the big guy was stunned, and asked, "Did we go through all this trouble just for a gun?" He thought the protagonist was trying to save Yuer, which moved him so much he almost caught a cold. But it was because Ye Bei knew guns were extremely rare in this area, and this one had a lot of potential for modification, making the big guy curious if it could be turned into a plasma cannon or a laser gun. But regardless, he was still impressed by the earlier performance. The protagonist pretended to chase him away, then planted the bead in the generator on the first floor. What a brilliant plan. Suddenly, there was a stirring sound nearby, making Ye Bei quickly turn and point the gun at a girl who had just woken up from the chaos. Just now, the girl was clutching her head, begging them not to hurt her. Then the big guy shone his light on her and commented on how gorgeous she was. The girl June confessed that the boss had captured her and she was treated like a slave every single day, suffering all sorts of abuse and torture, pleading with him to spare her life. The main character hesitated before asking the girl about the warehouse where the man stored his supplies, after which she sat up and agreed to lead them. On the way, the big guy struck up a conversation with her and found out her home was in the Anthon district and that she had a younger sister. But they got separated when the zombie apocalypse began. Unfortunately, the power was out, so the elevator was useless, and the storage room was all the way up on the 6th floor. Hearing this, Ye Bei asked the big guy to take her to find a room to wait in first. Meanwhile, he and Yu Ni would take the stairs up. Just then, down where the henchman lay dead, a trembling hand started to stir. It turned out to be the gray-haired guy who was as tenacious as a cockroach. He'd already outlived 2 bosses. His will to survive was just insane. At that moment, he looked up only to see his big boss lying there crushed, no longer breathing. As gray hair painfully dragged himself away, he accidentally spotted the black gold energy crystal lying on the ground. He quickly snatched it into his palm, raising it for a closer look, and then recalled what his boss had said. He remembered being told that eating it could make you an immortal, though most people just turned into zombies. After some thought, the gray-haired guy made his decision. He decided to bet on the slim chance of becoming an immortal and popped the pearl straight into his mouth. Suddenly, his eyes shot wide open. He started choking as white veins bulged all over his body, just as a massive thunderstorm broke out outside. At that moment, Yuer was also awakened by the thunder. She asked where they were, and the chubby guy filled her in on everything that had happened. A few minutes later, Ye Bei opened the door and was relieved to see Yuer awake. He told them he found a ton of good supplies upstairs, but it was too much for one person to carry, so they would have to go back for it tomorrow. That's when the chubby guy noticed something. He asked where that hot girl from earlier went, but the main character didn't know either, saying he couldn't find her in the room. But Ye Bei couldn't care less. He just ordered the chubby guy to go block the first floor entrance and keep the zombies out. The guy complained, but Yuer comforted him, telling him to let Ye Bei get some sleep and that she would stand guard with him. The scene shifts to the home of the class president, Li Ruoxi. At this moment, she was enjoying a much-needed shower in the bathroom. Suddenly, a brown-haired guy opened the door and asked if she was done showering yet. Startled, Ruoxi turned and yelled at him to get out. The brown-haired guy acted confused, asking why she was kicking him out of his own house. It was then she realized his true intentions for letting her take shelter there. He shot back, asking what kind of idiot would just randomly take in a stray woman from the streets for nothing. He sneered that you don't raise an animal just to look at it, explaining he only let her in after making sure she wouldn't mutate. Only then did he feel safe enough. There's no such thing as a free lunch. He then immediately threw the bathroom door open. He told her that if she wanted to survive this disaster, she'd have to be a good girl and cooperate with him. Ruoxi screamed for help, but with the storm raging outside, no one would hear her even if she screamed her lungs out, unless she hoped a zombie would come to her rescue. But as he spoke, the front door was suddenly smashed to pieces. The brown-haired guy ran out to check his face, turning pale as he let out a terrified scream. Curious Ruoxi also peeked out the door to see if it was really a zombie, only to be horrified by the sight of a mutated demon. Its body was grotesque and covered in disgusting spikes. This monster grabbed the brown-haired guy and slammed him against the wall, right where she was standing. Ruoxi was scared out of her mind, screaming and calling it a monster. It turns out this was the gray-haired guy who had developed zombie mutation powers after eating the black gold energy orb. Hearing her, he collapsed to the floor, explaining that he wasn't a monster and that he didn't know why this had happened to him. The immense shock caused him to slam his hand into the ground with incredible force, shattering the floor. She then grimaced and asked, "So what in the world are you?" He explained that he had been shot and felt like he wasn't going to make it. Before he died, he ate a black gold energy orb, and afterward, it felt like all his insides were being twisted around. Hearing this, Ruoxi was puzzled. He continued to explain that the black gold orb was what a male student named Ye Bei had called a pearl. It was taken from a zombie's skull. At that moment he felt his life was worthless, so he gambled on eating it to stay alive. When she heard the name Ye Bei, she was stunned, remembering her former classmate who had kicked her out of the warehouse. She immediately rushed over to question him again, causing her towel to come undone. She then used her assets to pin the gray-haired guy against the wall, demanding to know the main character's location. The gray-haired guy tearfully recapped what happened and guessed that Ye Bei couldn't have gone far, at which point Ruoxi grabbed him by the hair. She demanded he take her to find Ye Bei, wanting to dice him into 100 pieces, but the trembling gray-haired guy warned her that the main character was incredibly strong now. The two of them stood no chance against him alone. When he asked what her relationship with Ye Bei was, Ruoxi's heart broke as tears streamed down her face. Declaring they were sworn enemies, she shamelessly paraded her unclothed body in front of the monster. She pointed out how strong he'd become, killing that lowlife in the blink of an eye, a feat the gray-haired guy himself couldn't explain. It felt like a powerful energy was coursing through his body, a sign of his new zombie mutation powers, but he couldn't completely control it. He then turned to ask Ruoxi if she was afraid. Excitedly, she placed her hand on his and began her manipulation. She praised the gray-haired guy for being so powerful and strong, then moved in close, placing a hand on his cheek and using her charms to manipulate him. She asked him to kill Ye Bei for her, then pressed her body against his hands, promising she'd do whatever he wanted. The gray-haired guy was ecstatic, immediately sweeping Ruoxi into his arms, confessing his feelings and promising to defeat Ye Bei for her. Suddenly, he let out a piercing scream and clutched his head in agony. Meanwhile, in the gang leader's storeroom, the main character was gloving up and gearing up, taking every useful item he could find, and finally sheathing his sword on his back before telling everyone to get ready to hit the road. As they carried the supplies down to the first floor, they thought about the thugs. They expected them to have guns, but it turned out only the leader had one, though luckily they managed to score some supplies. It was enough to last them for another month. As soon as they reached the building's lobby, the chubby guy froze in his tracks. He was horrified to see that his epic ride had a massive dent in the roof, a sight so heartbreaking that he just wailed while trying unsuccessfully to open the car door. The main character wondered if the damage was from last night's heavy rain or the previous day's fight. He then told the chubby guy to stand back and watch, after which Ye Bei leaped onto the car and sliced the entire roof clean off with a single swing, instantly turning it into a convertible. The chubby guy rushed over to check and confirmed the engine was still running perfectly. He then turned to the main character and asked, "So, are we going to find their father next?" Seeing how determined the main character was to find Yuer's dad, the chubby guy decided to stick with the group. After driving for a while, he was actually starting to enjoy his new ride. This ruthless beast, but he really hoped no zombies would show up, since the convertible offered zero protection. It couldn't stop them at all now. Talk about jinxing it, because as soon as he said that, they appeared, and both the main character and the chubby guy looked over. They saw a few students fleeing from a massive zombie horde right behind them. Ye Bei recognized them as his former classmates, a reminder of his past life and the start of his school apocalypse revenge. They were the same ones who had hidden in the warehouse with him before. They ran screaming for help when suddenly a female student tripped and fell right in the path of the zombies. She was in too much pain to move. In this dire situation, the main character quietly stepped forward. With one swift strike, he annihilated the zombies, leaving his classmates completely stunned. When they turned, they recognized him and called out Ye Bei's name. He gave them a friendly smile, but deep down, he hadn't forgotten their past betrayal, a key memory from his life. In this regression survival manhwa, his classmates took turns thanking him, complimenting his powerful sword, and asking where he found it. But Ye Bei ignored their questions, instead asking where they planned to go. After escaping the school, his mind focused on the bigger picture of this time. After asking, he found out they left the school because they heard there was a human encampment on Heart Lake Island. So they were heading there. A few others had already been bitten by zombies along the way. Then the brown-haired guy saw the fatty's warhorse of a vehicle and asked the main character if they could hitch a ride since he'd driven all this way. After that, a female classmate put on a pitiful expression, complaining they hadn't eaten since yesterday, and hinted that since he had so much food, he could share a little with them. Inside the vehicle, Yuer and the fatty were also discussing Ye Bei's classmates, noticing how they kept staring at their vehicle. Suddenly, the main character snapped, "Enough, all this chatter is giving me a headache." He then said the vehicle was low on gas and couldn't carry so many people, but he could share a little food with them for now, but on the condition that they help him with one thing. Hearing this, the group of friends quickly agreed. The main character then called the fatty over to explain the job to them, after which, the big guy menacingly hopped out of the vehicle. The main character assigned the mission he would carve a path through the horde of zombies ahead, while the rest of them would clean up the ones on the ground. The fatty eagerly grabbed a shovel to demonstrate. First, he jammed the shovel into a zombie's head, dug around, and then hooked out a pearl-like core, holding it up for everyone to see. The green-haired girl saw this and passed out cold. The others turned all shades of pale and red. At that moment, Yuer reassured everyone, "Don't be afraid, because a zombie's skull is very soft, so popping these cores out is really easy." The blonde guy had no idea what the three of them must have gone through in this time-travel zombie survival scenario to become so skilled and fearless. Afterwards, the kind-hearted fatty went to the vehicle to lend them some shovels and knives, carefully warning them not to get bitten. The blonde guy was still wondering what Ye Bei even needed these cores for. Meanwhile, the main character was relentlessly slashing left and right, cutting his way through. The group also got used to harvesting the pearl-like cores. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed. The fatty carried over a huge bag brimming with their haul, and then Ye Bei asked him to share some food with the others, as promised. At first, the fatty seemed reluctant since Ye Bei had decided to give away their shared food on his own, making him scream internally as if he were being stabbed. He would give away anything else, but food was the one thing the fatty was absolutely unwilling to share with anyone. Suddenly, a monster dropped from the sky, pouncing onto the fatty's beloved warhorse of a vehicle. Everyone panicked at the sight of its massive, mutated form. It turns out yesterday, with Ruoxi, it was writhing in pain because its body was undergoing a full mutation, a complete evolution of its zombie mutation powers. At a glance, Ye Bei immediately identified it as a mutated ability user. But why would an ability user appear here? He instantly ordered everyone to get back. The monster lunged forward with a swipe, a red aura appearing before Ye Bei, who refused to back down. He also drew his sword and slashed, unleashing a blue aura that nearly hit its snout. The enraged monster leaped down onto the street. From behind it came the sound of applause, and Ruoxi's giggling. The main character and his classmates all recognized her with shocked expressions because, well, she wasn't dead yet. Ruoxi issued a challenge. The reason I've survived this long is to see you die. Then she ordered the monster to execute Ye Bei immediately. Just then, our MC realized the class president and this mutated beast were in cahoots, and the monster immediately charged forward. But Hyun stood his ground, raising his sword defensively, when suddenly a fireball erupted, crashing right between them. Everyone looked up to see another monster, a terrifying display of zombie mutation powers, its entire body engulfed in flames. That's a wrap for this episode, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you so much.